Hey there, I'm Matt Tommy, and over the last 10 years, I've helped thousands of Christian artists all over the world start thriving spiritually, artistically, and in the marketplace, while at the same time building my own super successful art business. If you're ready to bust through the roadblocks that have held you back for years, create the work you love, and really live the life you know God created you to live in His kingdom, then you're in the right place, my friend. Now with over 500,000 downloads, you're listening to the Thriving Christian Artist Podcast. Well, hey there, my friend. I'm so glad that you're here with me on the podcast today. Listen, I got a great interview from a couple that you might recognize from episode 123, Trent and Kate Freeman. Listen, I love these guys. If there is one couple inside our mentoring program who has lock, stock, and barrel, I mean full bore, been transformed by the power of God in the area of provision and their finances, it is the Freemans. I mean, God has done such an incredible work in their heart. I love sharing their story. And I wanted to come back to have them on again. We just actually produced a testimonial video of their story that you can actually see in the show notes. So you can, get a little bit better feel for who they are and what they do. But man, their story of transformation is really incredible. And in this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about that, how they got to that, but also what are some of the things that they're doing right now during the COVID pandemic, how really their transformation regarding their beliefs about God providing for them, God is their source, God is the one who's directing their business, and them being in partnership with Him under His leadership. Man, that has been a big game changer and allowed them to pivot in this crazy economy in such a way that is really having one of their biggest years ever, which I think is fabulous. So again, I've been saying this for so long, people that were ready and positioned to be able to hear God's voice and respond quickly in terms of their business are the ones that are thriving during this season. And we are seeing so much of that throughout members of the mentoring program. And I just love it. It's just the kingdom working normally. And there's no better story to tell and people to tell it than the Freeman. So, well, hey, before I get into that interview, I want to give a shout out to one of my podcast listeners, Kitty's Mama 72 over on Apple Podcasts. Love that. Actually from Great Britain. I think that's pretty cool. She says, I love the natural way Matt communicates. It's like having a chat with him. He not only makes his living from his own unique art, he then applies what he's learned to our art and gives so much support to the listeners. I like the variety of interviews, professional topics, faith, and business is my favorite Christian artist podcast, authentic and lively. Well, thank you so much. I love to see those 5 stars over on Apple Podcasts. I love it when people review and subscribe to the podcast. So Kitty's Mama, I bet you're sassy out there. I love that. Kitty's Mama 72. I'm so glad that you're listening, and I'm so glad that you're a part of our community, and really glad that the podcast is a blessing to you. All right. Speaking of a blessing, listen, you are going to love an opportunity that we've got coming up, actually starting today. It's actually called the Artists Rise Up Masterclass. It's an incredible 5-part series that I'm doing all on lots of different topics around what it means to be a thriving artist in the kingdom of God. You know that God called me back in 2009 to raise up an army of artists to reveal His glory in the earth. And that includes not only the spiritual side, but also the practical side, what that means for you as an artist, what it means for you as a business person, what are the roadblocks that you face and how to overcome those? How do you actually sustain and accelerate breakthrough in your life so that you can get on to doing the thing that God's called you to do in strength and allow that to be a vehicle of blessing, not only for your life, but also to those around you. That's what the masterclass is all about. All right. I want to encourage you, click the link that's right here in the show notes. When you do that, it's going to take you to a page where you'll drop in your name and your email. You'll get instant access to the free resources that we've got with the masterclass, as well as a link to the free private Facebook group that goes along with that masterclass, where again, already thousands of artists are gathering in order to be a part of this wonderful time together. All right. Plus, when you're a part of that, you're going to be able to find out at the end of the masterclass, you're going to hear incredible stories just like the Freemans, from artists who are having major breakthrough in their life. And we're going to give you an opportunity to become a part of the Create to Thrive Artist Mentoring Program. We only do that twice a year, in January and in September. And we would love for you to consider being a part. So jump into the masterclass, find out what it means to be a thriving artist in the kingdom of God, get some great teaching, some great connection, and then consider joining us for the mentoring program this next year. It could be a real game changer in your life. All right. Well, my friend, I'm going to get out of the way, and you're going to love this interview with Trent and Kate. In fact, we talked about 30 minutes before the interview, then we did the interview, then we talked for about 45 minutes after the interview. So this could have been like a series in itself, but I think we captured the essence of what God's done in their most recent journey, especially going through all this COVID pandemic, and it's going to be a big inspiration to you. All right, here's my interview with Trent and Kate Freeman. Well, hey, my friend, I'm so glad that you're with me on the podcast today. I've got some awesome friends, Trent and Kate Freeman from all the way out in Kansas City area. Guys, welcome. So glad that you're here with me again on the podcast.
Thanks, Matt.
We're so glad to be here.
Yeah,
I know it. Some people may be saying, hey, I know their names. Well, if you are thinking you've heard them before, you've heard a lot of their story on episode number 123, as Kate says, number 123, not too long ago, but just kind of y'all's background and that sort of thing. But all this month on the podcast, we're talking about stories of transformation and also stories of really what people are doing in the middle of COVID, in the middle of all this craziness and that sort of thing. And wanted to reach out to you guys. And so for those folks who've not listened to 123 yet, tell us kind of who you are, where you're from, what you do, that sort of thing, and then we'll jump in. So
right on.
Go ahead, babe.
I'm Kate Freeman, and we have T.E. Freeman Studio, Perennis Memoriam. Those are two of our businesses, and I do clay sculpture and some utilitarian work. I love to make teapots. And then I have started painting, which is awesome and fun. So learning a new skill is always good.
Yeah.
And
I'm Trent Freeman, and I do sculpture, mixed media sculpture, and Perennis Memoriam, which are memorials, funerary memorials, and then do one-off sculpture for individuals and for gallery work and businesses and things like that. So it's kind of, and we teach workshops and classes out of our studio. So
awesome.
So it's been good
stuff. Well, I've so enjoyed getting to know you guys over the last couple of years and just hearing your story. And, we're fellow fine craft artists. So, there's always that line between what's art and what's craft. And I always say, well, about $1,000. That's the difference.
Exactly. That's exactly true.
That's right. But we're all moving in that direction. But I've loved watching you guys. And that's really why I wanted to have you back on, because your story of where you were when you first came in the mentoring program and where you are now, and even how you're thriving in the middle of COVID and just the complete landscape change, if you will, that we've all had with
God
the
is good.
art shows and all that kind of closing. And so let's kind of, again, if folks want to listen to your whole backstory, go check out episode 123. It's really great. But talk about, March came, y'all were actually at the Thriving Christian Artists Conference here in Asheville. We had 500 people that were here. And then I think we were the last event that Ridgecrest had, and then everything got shut down. And so for you guys, what did that look like when everything started shutting down and shows started shutting down and galleries and all that? I mean, what goes through your mind at that point?
Well, that's exactly what goes through your mind. It was crazy because we came back from the conference
full of ideas and
just going crazy,
business ideas and ready to go. We do the Parthenon plan and with the 90-day, the 90-day plan.
Right. And we had set up our 90 days, and it's just, we were ready to go full bore. And then we come back to crazy town. And it was like, what is going on? Classes, our workshops and classes had stopped. It was like, and that's a nice chunk of our income. and galleries, there were no shows, things we had scheduled and stuff like that, just and done. And so we were trying to figure that out. It was really interesting because we really took the approach of okay, no fear, what does this look like? And it really turned our plan upside down. So we weren't sure exactly what that looked like and what that meant as far as a whole change of venue.
Right.
And we leaned in hard on God to try to get some guidance in
and those are things that we've learned. And God preps you for things. I think God preps you for things big time. Yeah. And I think God prepped us for this through the mentoring program. We have learned to put God in the center of our work and our business and everything. We always talk about how we used to have like all these boxes, and we had like the God box was over here. You go to church and worship. The art box was here. The studio box was here. And everything with the family box, everything was separate. Everything was separate in these different things. And once we started the mentoring program, God was in the center, and then all of these things moved out from God being the center of our business. And so we leaned hard because we'd learned that. We leaned hard into that and figuring out and understanding provision. Yeah. That's what that is. So we had no fear in knowing where our provision was coming from.
Which is a phenomenal change, like for all of us, right? That is like game changer.
game changer. You can knock me over with a feather from a year ago to now. I'm just like, it's provision. And so we began to have, what does this look like? We come up with some online class ideas, and kind of put forth those, and we're doing this quick. Because
on the fly,
you're in pivot mode, right?
It was total pivot mode because we're like, we don't know what to do, and
reached out to people. I reached out to a few people in the group because I didn't know what to do, and people have done. People in the group have gone ahead of us, and so learning from them, asking a few questions. I think I'm going to do it this way. What do you do? What do you think? Amy Smith, all means all. That's her biggest thing. She always says, and Amy Smith was wonderful help to me. There's several people, and I can't name all the names, that just really, that the community of the group really helped with that too, because we were able to reach out, ask questions, assess, and then put it out
and
there.
Then began to put it out there. And so one of those things, I journal every morning, and I do my prayer journal, and I get in like this, and I spend that time in first thing and waking up in the morning, just kind of like, how's the day going to go? What's it going to look like? Where are we going?
Asking God,
what is this? And I had this dream, this pre-awakening kind of dream of do a live and make something specifically for somebody. And so people can watch and see. And I didn't know quite what that meant. And so I come out and I tell Kate, and I was like, man, I had this idea,
I got to download, right? We're going to do this.
I got to download, baby. I'm like, right on. And so I
said, give me coffee first.
That's right, exactly.
We'll talk.
And she says, I had kind of the same idea, but that's not how it works. She said, you're going to do an auction. And you're going to do an auction, and you're going to do this, and we're going to make things. We're going to do it over a time period. And she just kept sitting there just working this out. And I'm like, yeah, that's it. That's what we're going to do. Yes. And I'm like, what am I going to make? I was like, how am I going to do
I said,
this?
that's on you. That's on you. I'm just the
And so it was one of those things that I do mostly larger kind of sculptural work pieces. I started, my undergraduates as a potter, and I did pots, made coffee mugs, bowls, these kind of things. Well, I did that, and I teach a lot of wheel throwing classes now and things like that. And I'm quite prolific at wheel throwing. So she's like, you're going to make these things and throw on the wheel right there live, and people are going to start bidding on them as soon as you do it.
So as soon as you start, we'll start the bidding at a certain amount. They said, and then we'll move through that. And when you say you're done, that's when the bidding stops.
Wow.
And some of the logistics in that were, we were like, okay, but what if we don't get for the piece of pottery what we would get if we sold it in a gallery, if we sold it out.
Right.
And so we started at that price.
Yeah, I started there. I said,
at the minimum, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna start there. And we just didn't do wheel throwing. We kind of set up, I did some raku firing, so that's pretty instantaneous. I did some horsehair, putting the hair on the pots and washing. And people dig that stuff when you see it. It's a good show. And
it was very fun. Everybody enjoyed it.
Oh yeah, we did it. We ran it for 4 hours. We started it, and I was putting color on the pots. I had some colored slips, and I was putting them on there, so people were watching color actually go onto these things. And then I carved through them, and do these spirals, and it was good visual entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to make a piece like every 13 minutes, and move through. And as we began to do it, I'd start that bidding, and people started jumping on. And then when we were all done, it was like, wow, that was crazy. I made 13 pieces. I sold all 13 pieces. And as we did it, we kind of looked at the statistics,
How many shows do you sell out at? How many shows do you go to?
Exactly.
Or festivals do you go to, and you sell everything and take zero home?
Yeah. I mean,
that's what
it was awesome.
Did.
Yeah, God showed up in a big way. Because I'll tell you, it was.
And you don't have to pack anything up, right? I mean, you're like,
oh, yeah, yeah. And the overhead was crazy low. It was right in the studio. So, so we kind of looked at the stats afterwards to see like how many people engaged this and walked through this, and so we started looking at that. And I kind of look at
Facebook Insights, people. I'm the business person in this.
Yeah.
I'm the business side of this.
Kate, Kate runs all that stuff.
And insights are so very important.
So we looked at that, and it just floored us, because it was one of those things where, and mind you, we only advertised for like a week, and
this came to us quick, and then we decided we need to do it now.
But you've been building connection too with your audience for a long time. I mean, you're working, you've been in it. Yeah. I mean, so
yeah, and we've been in it for a long time, but we even had people showing up. People were having other people do like watch parties and all this kind of stuff. Like they started getting floored by this.
The power of Facebook.
Yeah, sure.
It was like, and we found out about this later, but we looked at those stats, and I attributed it to the idea of, I used to do a lot of festivals. I traveled all over the country and did, large festivals. And this was like, man, if you set up at a show and we had 2,000 people come to the show, out of that, about 700 people actually walked through my booth, which was fantastic.
Right, sure.
At a festival. 700 people walked through your booth. We had 300 people engage with me in something, actively engage in that process. And then we had a little over 100 people fighting for 13 pieces in my booth. And from that, I sold all of those things. And then I had other people who were like, hey, I missed out on that one piece, could you make me one?
Right.
And I'm like, yeah. And then so I sold it for what the final bid was. And we made thousands of dollars in 4 hours. And we just killed it. And we're not ones to set much. I mean, if we get an idea, we're going for the idea. Right. And then, like you say, test and measure. Yeah. And it's like, okay,
that was a quick test and measure.
And then we did it again. And then people were going like, when you're doing this again, I missed half of it. When are you doing it again?
Well, in the second time, we did just as much in a shorter amount of time.
Yeah.
And
you're perfecting the system now, right?
Right.
And made more money.
Yeah.
It was crazy. It was crazy.
And it was God-filled and God-led. For it to come at the certain times that it came, we didn't know it, but we actually hit it right after the stimulus checks came out, and we didn't know that was going to happen.
Right.
But it was, you didn't know when they were coming.
Right.
But it was almost exactly then. And then the next one we did plan and did just before Mother's Day. So that was
incredible.
Because we had a lot of people ask, well, you do one before Mother's Day? I'd love to have something like this for my mom. And so we made sure we did it enough time to have it fired and given and all of that.
And then from that led into some people who had watched, who hadn't seen my work in a long time or anything like that, began conversation, began talking, asked if I was still doing some of the things I used to do, which led into us discussing with some people a couple months later, a few months later, and I got a humongous installation project out of the deal. I've got a show this fall.
By humongous, he means 8 feet tall and
6 feet by 4 feet by 8 feet.
Wow.
I mean,
it's a monster. It's huge.
Yeah, and then have a show set up for this fall. A private show.
I love it, though. I think the thing that I'm hearing from this, and I hope everybody's getting this on the podcast, is the big thing is for those people who are positioned to be able to receive, you've done the mindset work, you've turned your heart toward how the kingdom works, you're in community with other people that are moving the same way. God has this incredible opportunity to be able to pour blessing and ideas and provision into your life. But if you're still kind of broke, busted, and disgusted and trying to figure this thing out on your own and make it happen and all that, you're not able to really walk in all the blessing that he's trying to get to you. You know, I just think that's so huge for you guys. Because I hear your story over and over, and it's just like, I think one of the things people can take from this is, oh, well, they're just lucky, or, oh, well, they're working together and I'm by myself, or, you know, their work is better than mine, or they're in a super popular area for art and I'm not. I'm in the middle of Podunk wherever or whatever. But it's like, I mean, tell people where you guys live. You guys are not like, I mean, granted, I'm in Asheville, like as a major art center and that sort of thing. I mean, tell everybody where you live.
Yeah. So we're in Kansas City. We're on the Kansas side of Kansas City. You know, because Kansas City is right there, Missouri and Kansas on two states. We're 20 minutes from downtown. Now, Kansas City has an incredible art district and art center in the downtown, but we're kind of out in the country. Yeah. I mean, you know, we've got 3 acres and
we're a little
stuff
bit like past the suburbs, you know, past the suburbs.
And so it's one of those things where there's nothing right in our community. I mean, you know, you got to try to get into downtown and do something down there, but you know, you'd make a comment, they're just lucky or something like that, and I'm always like, no way, man. I mean, no, there's no way. You know, I've done this a long time, so, and I've gone through ups and downs and stuff like that, and I had 12 years of a lot of down. You know, trying to figure out this. And that's what led us even to the mentoring program. Yeah. That was one of those things that it's like the way I started doing business, and then with technology, I mean, things changed, and I didn't change with that. I didn't figure that out. And then it's like, what do you do? How do you do this? And getting into a market and figuring it out and especially learning to do it, walking with God and finding that provision and being ready to receive that, man, it is a game changer. But we try all kinds of things. Like everybody talks about living in a podunk town. Nobody would show up here. Nobody would do. Right. I'm like, oh, that's bunk. Because I'm like, we try it here, you know, at our studio. And we started doing like a Christmas show. And you know, and it just like it was friends and some family that came the first time we did. And we have people just drive down the road and see our sign and just pull in and just come now and just show up because it's just out there. And we do it the same time every year on the same weekend. And people know and now are expecting it. So even in our small community, there are people showing up. And now we invite other friends of ours who are artists to come set their stuff up. So now our whole house gets filled with artist stuff and people come in and walk through and it's become kind of a big deal. And
I buy a new dress. It's fabulous.
Yeah. And so it has become a deal. So we are ready for that and accepting that. And it just, not only that, it's just, since we know where our provision comes from and we understand that, and understanding that, man, that's the key. Because once that got into my head, that
Yeah.
God not needing money and understanding where that, I was like,
Well, I think one of the things it does, I know for me, and I'm hearing this in you guys too, is that when you know that God's your provider, you know that he's the one that's going to bring the provision, no matter how he chooses to bring it, then it takes the fear and anxiety off of you so that you can step out and do things that maybe you've not done before out of fear of what if this doesn't work and what if I lose my money and all this kind of thing. No, you realize, hey, God's downloading me ideas. I'm going to step out of this and trust that he's going to lead the next steps. And I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've done things. We do like we did these online classes and stuff like that. And they didn't pop. They didn't pop.
Yeah.
And, you know, and really in my mind, I'm like, oh, that's people are crazy because these are good ideas. Yeah, I know.
Right.
He always says that.
I'm like,
these are great ideas.
People
are crazy.
People are crazy. But it was one of those things where it's like, okay, well, we're not going to keep whipping that dead horse.
Yeah.
We are going to, okay, that didn't work. Let's keep going.
Yeah.
You know, and there's no.
We have a friend that says fail fast.
Yeah.
He's always told us that.
He always has told us that. He's like, you're going to fail fast and keep going. He goes, don't dwell in it. Don't dwell in it. Don't look at it. And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, that's true. And so we just.
Well, and then with your, test and measure, those two things really helped us.
Man, it just all the time. We're always doing it. We're always doing it.
Well, it takes the shame off of it because I think, especially as artists, if something doesn't work exactly like you wanted it, there can be all that, I'm no good, I'm never going to make all this kind of stuff that goes around. And it's like, no, okay, it didn't go like I thought it was going to go. What worked great? What didn't? What can I change for next time?
Moving on.
Move on. And that's a lot. I know for me, and I hear this with your story too, that's a lot easier to do when you're not by yourself, but when you're in community, right? Because you can throw that out to others and say, is anybody else having this issue or what's going on? And it's
right.
That's
right.
huge.
Well, and that's what's so wonderful about the mentoring program, because in the group, that it has been such a community of other artists. I always look for moving from a secular art world into even a Christian art world. I didn't know it existed. The thing was once I found a group of people that I'm like, just a peer group. I mean, just guys that I can say, this, ladies that I can say this, Kate and I both being able to look at and just ask the question
about anything,
about
any part of it, spiritual, business related, classes, artistically related, all of those things all of those things are available now to us through other people in the community of artists that we're in.
And it's changed. And it's changed the way. I mean, honestly, Matt, it has changed the way we do everything.
Everything.
Boom. Everything. It warms our heart to know that seriously, that you are in this and guiding people through this, and we're watching it work. Mm-hmm. I mean, when we first signed up, it was so funny. When we first signed up, I was like, we didn't know what else to do. And it was one of those things that I'm like, okay, if we get this, we're going to do exactly what this guy says. And we're going to follow it, and we're going to get into it and dive into it and start working through it. And when we did, I mean, I've even backed up a few times and gone back and looked at a few other things, because the one difference was I was comfortable knowing I was an artist. I mean, that's what I've done since I got out of college. And so I was like,
there's no self-doubt in his abilities.
Yeah, I got that. I got that. But I didn't, there was so much I didn't understand that now I mean, and even after being in the group for, over a year, I still get hit with stuff. That provision stuff just, I was like, oh, that's it.
Well, you hear it through somebody else's story, or you're ready to hear something that you weren't ready to hear a year ago, or whatever. I think that's always the process. So. Well,
I think too, we've got some big things, I think, on the horizon. We are letting God guide us in that so much, as far as possibly a new studio and a larger studio and places to teach and do. Right. We don't know exactly what God's got in store yet for that. Yeah. But to watch you go forward with no fear, leaving a studio that I know you loved that. Yeah. I know you loved that studio. That studio has a lot of memories and family memories, I'm sure, business memories, mentoring memories. All of those things are there. but you're taking that with you and moving on, and to be able to go from that space to the next space, and it be such a huge,
because I've been in my
huge
studio.
thing.
I've been in my studio for 20 years.
Yeah,
And
it's
I've been
family, right? I mean, it's like the walls are family.
And it's in our home. It's in our home. So the thought of moving from that, watching you go through that
Now it's getting
with
exciting.
grace, it makes us really excited.
Yeah.
So
I told somebody the other day, I said, because, a year and a half ago when I started thinking about moving studios, I was like, oh my goodness. I mean, there's no way that we're ever going to get this place, cleaned out and all that. I said, it's much easier just to move than it is to clean a basketry studio. Let me just say that, because
right?
the great thing was we were moving out and they were coming in and demolishing everything in there and making it a totally clean space. So we didn't have to really go in and clean and all this kind of stuff. I was like, this is fabulous. We could just leave.
Just leave.
Just leave.
So,
Yeah.
but anyway.
That would be great.
I know it. Well, guys, what a story. I mean, I never get tired of hearing people's stories and how God's doing such incredible things in your life. I want to give you just one opportunity here at the end. You've done it so beautifully throughout the whole interview, but we open the mentoring program, obviously, a couple of times a year. This is one of those times at the end of September. We're going to be opening it up for folks. If somebody's sitting out there right now, a guy, a lady, where you were a year and a half ago before you got in the mentoring program, what would you say to them, and what would you say to them in regards to considering becoming a part of our community?
Well, it'll be 2 years this September we've been in. We got in at the 11th hour. I mean, the last possible time.
We actually didn't do any of the experience courses or anything like that. We just found you.
Yep. And that was it. And I'm telling you what, this has been the biggest game changer in our entire life. It has changed us. It has moved us artistically, business, family, the whole
Everything.
Everything. And you cannot not do this.
All means all.
All means all.
Everything.
Yeah. You can't not do this.
I would say from all of those standpoints, I come from the business standpoint. Just take the leap. Don't look back. Don't worry about how you're going to pay for it. Don't worry about any of those things. Do it and get as much as you can out of it, and just go for it, because it will change your world. And if you do everything in there and you really dig deep into God, it's gonna change you, and you won't even have to worry about anything.
This is a community worth having.
Yes.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well,
Absolutely.
You guys are friends worth having, and it's a joy, really, to know you, to hear your story, to see what God's doing. It's beyond anything I ever thought would happen through what we're doing. And
same with us.
Yeah, it's amazing. So anyway, thank you for being on today. What a wonderful opportunity to hear your story again. So thanks, guys. Hey, thanks so much for spending a few minutes with me today on the podcast. Listen, I hope it's been a huge encouragement to you on your journey as an artist. Hey, also, before you leave, make sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any of the other episodes of the Thriving Christian Artist podcast. And also, be sure to connect with me on Facebook, Instagram, or at my website, which is matttommymentoring.com. Until next time, remember, you were created to thrive. Bye-bye.